This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Hey, what's up, and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I take your hot takes from the comment section and interact with them. This is my chance to interact with you live. Well, not live, but in video format. Mandel with the first hot take, and we'll put it up on screen here, who says this. I think Sanders was a better prospect than Bo Nix or Williams last year. Caleb Williams? No. You might got an argument with Bo Nix. Caleb Williams, that's absurd. Penix and Daniels look like good prospects. Kenny Pickett was in a class. Nobody in his class was a starter. Trevor Lawrence is the best in his class. He's not very good. Either Dylan Gabriel, is Trevor Lawrence the best in his class anymore? What year was Trevor Lawrence? Was that Joe Burrow? No, that wasn't Joe Burrow. Well, let's see who was in that class with Trevor. Anyways, let me get back to the question. Either Dylan Gabriel or Sanders would have been drafted ahead of Kenny Pickett. Some classes ain't good for QB. Very likely there are no starting caliber coaches. In the next class, just looking at history. What? Arch Manning is more like, okay. What do you mean history? Like, we can look at the prospects that are going to be available in next year's draft class and evaluate them. Like, we're not relying on history to tell us what next year's draft class is going to be. So I don't get that part of it. As far as like, is Sanders a better prospect than Bo Nix? Maybe. Bo Nix wasn't an extraordinary prospect coming out of Oregon, but what Bo Nix was successful with Oregon. And from a win-loss perspective, also had more prototypical size than like a Dylan Gabriel, who I would argue has a better track record of success than Bo Nix, just does not have the same size as Bo Nix. So there's that, but like Caleb Williams, we're going to say that Shedeur Sanders was a better prospect than Caleb Williams. Like, that's just ridiculous. That's just wrong. I think Shedeur is a similar prospect to Bo Nix. You can put him above or behind him, but I think they're similar prospects. Some stuff to like, some stuff not. Generally, like the conversation was like, I don't know if he goes in the top 5, but maybe in the late first. So I could see that. The Kenny Pickett was in the class, so I don't know. Like, you're trying to make a larger point about drafts and people just because they're the first quarterback taken not being the best quarterback taken, which is true. But we do know what classes usually have good quarterbacks in them and what classes don't. The hyped up quarterback classes usually pay out, right? People hyped up the 2024 quarterback class, Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels. And I think all three of those guys have had successful first years. People hyped up the 2018 draft class, and that was proven to be correct. When a draft class gets hyped up at quarterback by scouts, it's usually because there's going to be one or two guys who come out of that are going to be in the landscape of the NFL for years to come. So, yeah, I'm not 100% following you, but maybe I lost some of it in translation with some of what you were trying to say here. But the parts I did follow, that's my response to. Shocker says, Q, I know it's early to scout for next year, but with 2 first-round picks, would you go for a quarterback and a good O-line, assuming one of the current quarterbacks pan out, a wide receiver and a cornerback, or a offensive lineman and a defensive tackle? Or do you think we'll trade out the second pick in an additional 2027 first? Ideally, I I think any of those are good, but I'd bolster the O-line. It's getting pretty old. It is impossible to tell you what position the Browns are going to draft in 2026 at this point in time. And I would argue that the Browns aren't going to make this decision based on position, but prospect, right? If there's a prospect that makes sense in the offensive line, then they'll draft them. If there's a prospect that makes sense for them at quarterback, they'll draft them. If there's a prospect that makes a lot of sense for them at wide receiver, cornerback, safety, defensive tackle, they're going to be inclined to make whatever decision makes sense. But I think they're going to look at it as prospect over just position. So not really thinking they're going to be too diehard on that idea there. The next hot take is from Jay Williams, who says, in response to my Shador is not getting traded video, TJ Hushman-Zeta keeps saying someone on the Browns told him that Sanders is being released. Like, that's where this whole rumor came from, right? Is TJ Hushman-Zeta, who, like, I respect what he's done as a wide receiver, but if we're talking about scoops, he's not really a scoops guy. And I don't know why he's saying that somebody from the Browns is telling him that Sanders is going to be released. Maybe he's in contact with somebody who wants this to be the case, but isn't really in charge of making the decision. The reality is, and I did a whole video on it, if you want to hear more about why I think that whole narrative is kind of silly. The reality is that the Browns have invested enough in Shador Sanders where they're definitely going to keep him on the team for at least like this year. Next year, the year after, those become a little bit more questionable, but you're not going to trade 2 6-round picks to move up in the 5th round to cut somebody. That makes absolutely no sense. That's silly. Go with Jordan Nord, who says, I believe Kevin has a good system, but the problem is he struggled to identify young franchise caliber quarterbacks that can excel in it. This may not be entirely his fault, but after many years, it is definitely a problem. He's got to prove that between one of the 4 quarterbacks, hopefully one of the rookies, at least one of them is a fit. I agree with this. 100%. This is absolutely something that Kevin has to prove he can do, which is guide a younger quarterback to success in the system. Now, I'm not saying that somebody has to be in the Pro Bowl or that he has to create the next Brock Purdy, right? Quarterbacks are hard to find for everybody. I think that's true. But you have to feel much better at the end of the season about Kevin's ability to develop these guys and to put young quarterbacks in a situation. We got to see more of what he did with Baker Mayfield in 2020, because outside of that one season, it's the only time we've really seen Kevin do anything positive with the young quarterback, right? Everything else has been with older veteran quarterbacks. And we know that Kevin knows what he's doing when it comes to those guys and getting more out of those guys. But the big question here is like, hey, if we draft Cade Klubnik, if we draft Lenore Sellers, are we putting them in the right hands to be developed with Kevin Stefanski? Like, I think that's a huge part of what has people nervous. And like, if you don't feel good about it, I do think that's enough for a team to make the decision to move off of you, because quarterback is important. It's the most important position, right? So that's got to be something that Kevin handles this offseason. And it's going to be interesting to see if he is capable of doing it this season. Like, I think this is kind of make or break in that respect for Kevin. Again, it might just be the case that Shador's not that good or Dylan's not that good, but he should be able to get something reasonable out of one of these quarterback rooms, something that's not awful. We shouldn't be 46th and 47th in success rate again, like we were last year. Johnny says this: it makes me wonder if the hiring of Tommy Rees was Kevin acknowledging that he's not the best at developing young quarterbacks. Tommy was brought in to bridge the gap. With that being said, I believe young quarterback development would be based on how good of an offensive coordinator Tommy is. I don't think that's the move that was saying what you're saying there. I think Kevin hiring a quarterback coach for the first time is more of an indicator of that. I think Tommy Rees is here to bring in new ideas to Kevin Stefanski's system and to kind of be his right-hand man. I don't think Tommy's here because he thinks Tommy's going to be insanely good at developing a young quarterback. What in Tommy Rees's toolkit has ever demonstrated that to be the case, more so than even Kevin? Like, at least Kevin has that 2020 Baker season to lean back on when it comes to success with a young quarterback. Tommy Rees doesn't have that. I think Tommy's here to be the offensive coordinator and to help Kevin out and to bring new ideas to Kevin. I think the guy that's here to help him develop a quarterback is Bill Musgrave, right? Like, he's officially the quarterback coach here for a reason. They gave him that promotion for a reason. And I think that's because they've identified that there is something being lost in transition when it comes to the development of this quarterback room, when they're operating in this way where Kevin Stefanski is kind of the de facto quarterback coach. That's the move that I think raises my eyebrows and makes me wonder, hey, is this the Browns admitting that, you know, maybe Kevin should have a little bit more of a step away from the quarterback room if we're trying to develop somebody in order to get that quarterback to be able to operate Kevin's offense at the level that you want him to operate it at? Or is there just another voice in the room that's necessary when it comes to the development of the quarterback room? I think that's the thing that's been interesting, right? Kevin's had different offensive coordinators throughout his time in Cleveland. I don't think he's ever had a quarterback's coach. Well, Drew Petzing, I think, was the last quarterback's coach they had. And they haven't replaced him since they hired Billy Musgrave. I think that's one of the things that kind of stood out to me. So that's my reaction to the hot takes this week. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.